Hi guys, just before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to ask you a big favor. Assuming you like the content that I'm putting out on this channel, could you please do me a favor and press the subscribe button? It really does help reach more people. And while you're at it, if you could just smash that like button down there, we'd really appreciate it. I just want to get this channel out to as many people as possible, so more and more people are getting exposed to these kinds of stories. And I'll stop talking now and let you get into the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. Today, I am really happy and excited to have on the show Rachel Hill. Rachel first began developing symptoms of Hashimoto's at around 16 years old. And after years of debilitating symptoms, being dragged through the medical system, not knowing if she would make it out the other side, here she is today. Her condition in remission, thriving and helping others do the same. And here she is also to share her story. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today.
Thank you very much for having me. That's a really sort of concise roundup. It's probably a lot better than I could do. So thank you.
No, well, that's why we've got a full podcast episode for you. So, so what I'd like to do is, if we could go back, I mentioned 16 years old. If you could take us back before then, was childhood for you? Were you someone who had symptoms like growing up? Could you see, looking back on it, were there signs that something wasn't quite right? Or could you just give us a little bit detail on that?
Yeah, so obviously at the time as a child, I didn't really know that there was anything different. But now looking back, I can see that I was a very, in quotations, lazy child. A lot of time on the sofa, in bed, I just felt a lot more tired, and I didn't understand, looking at my peers around me, how they had the energy to do sports or run around. I used to go to a youth club once a week on a Friday evening where we could play things like table tennis and get involved. And I just used to sit and watch and just think, I don't understand how you have the energy. But people labeled me as lazy, so I thought that was just a personality trait that I had. I was just lazy. And then, I experienced things like chronic constipation. It's an embarrassing symptom that a lot of people don't like to talk about. And that's probably why for years I didn't realize that was such an issue. But yeah, as a kid, I could go 2 or 3 weeks between passing bowel movements and things like that. And then that would be quite painful. So yeah, obviously looking back now, I can see that these sorts of things are typical sort of thyroid symptoms. That's not to say that I had my thyroid condition necessarily from that young, but I think that things were definitely starting to falter and move towards that direction. And a lot of the things that often create this perfect storm of developing an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's and a thyroid condition. So things like having poor gut health, they were probably already there in place and were probably a reason why I was having constipation or feeling really fatigued. So looking back now on that kind of lens, it looks really clear to me. And then at 16, that's when things started to get really ramped up and a lot of other symptoms kind of came into play as well.
Well, I guess we probably grew up in a similar like time where, I don't know about you, but like ready meals, microwave meals and stuff like that were just they weren't seen as bad or anything like that when I was growing up, and so I guess, and organic and stuff like that. I guess stuff like that for your gut. I actually think about it quite a lot. Like when I was a kid, the stuff that I would have been eating, and my mum and dad, they didn't feed me like badly at all. But when I compare it to what the information we're exposed to today, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I grew up in a family where we didn't have an awful lot as well. So it was a case of eating what we could afford. And I probably had a fairly balanced meal. We would have things like what we called vegetable dinners, where we'd have a lot of vegetables and a pie on the plate or something like that. But there was often sort of frozen pizzas that you just stick in the oven and that would be your dinner, or like you say, microwave meals and things like that. I think it was just a case of getting fed, and I was part of a big family as well. So that was kind of the priority. I think, like you say, now we have so much information at our fingertips around nutrition and making slightly better food choices. And Organic was definitely not as accessible as it is now, or just understanding how to create a more kind of well-balanced plate of food as well. That wasn't as easily available in, say, the 90s when I sort of had most of my childhood.
And so you mentioned, and we talked about it, that you were 16 when you started to get symptoms. Could you take us through that part of the story? What happened then?
Yeah, so at 16 years old, I contracted swine flu, which was kind of the big world crisis at the time. Yeah. So it was quite bad. Pretty much what you'd expect: heavy fatigue, I was hallucinating, having sweats. We didn't realize that's what I had for a week or two. Eventually, like we spoke about a little bit before we started this recording, my family was kind of one of those. You only went to the doctor when you got really ill, and it was almost like a badge of honor to, oh, I've not been to the doctor in years, when actually it probably means you're not going for some things when you should. Yeah. So yeah, I eventually ended up there after I'd been really ill for a week or two, and they diagnosed swine flu and gave me the sort of medication for it. And that pretty much got me better in another week or so. But better in the sense that I was over the initial illness. After that swine flu, I was just never really the same. Looking back now, again, I can see it fast-tracked my thyroid condition, just kind of ramping up, and was encouraging this perfect storm leading up to my diagnosis. Because after the swine flu had gone, I had this consistent heavy fatigue, like I was dragging myself through sludge every day, brain fog and sort of concentration issues. And what probably concerned me most was these deep muscle aches and pains in the calves of my legs. So as a supposedly healthy teenager who was already quite lazy, I would then get home from probably not having done that much that day, because I was already tired, and I'd just kind of lay on the sofa for the evening with my legs just really hurting. And whenever I quiz doctors about it, they just put it down to, oh, it must just be an ongoing thing from the swine flu. You might just always have it, or it might eventually go away. And not really knowing much else, I just kind of trusted that and got on with things. Then from the age of 16 to 21, when I was eventually diagnosed with my thyroid condition, symptoms just kept kind of adding to that list and ramping up. At 18 years old, I caught another, what they called at the time, weird strain of flu. We never fully figured out what it was, but it affected me so badly that I ended up in hospital. After a week of being in hospital and not being able to make any progress, I then developed into pneumonia, and I was on life support in intensive care for a week or two. So again, we just couldn't figure out what was going on, but my health was just quickly deteriorating. And after coming out of hospital, I spent my 18th birthday in there unconscious. I came out of hospital at 18, having had these two quite severe illnesses in a couple of years. And my health was just devastated. My hair was falling out. I was having migraines. I was struggling to stay in a sixth form college at the time to complete my A-levels. Just symptoms from head to toe, from digestive issues to, like I said, about brain fog and migraines and muscle aches and pains and fatigue, and just kind of developing rashes and eczema, and just one thing after another. You could kind of name a symptom and I had it. I think at one point I had almost 30 sort of separate things. Ended up with the diagnosis of anxiety disorder and depression, which I think a lot of us do before we eventually get that sort of physical health condition diagnosis. And there's I can't deny that I was definitely depressed and anxious at that time, but they were more so follow-on effects of this other thing that had been undiagnosed. They weren't the cause of everything that I was complaining to the doctor about. So yeah, it just felt like everything was in my head for a good number of years, was made to feel a bit like a hypochondriac, until I eventually got that diagnosis with a bit more persistence at 21.
So when you were between the ages of 16 and 21, were you seeing just GPs, or were you getting referred in the NHS? Or
no, I was just back and forth to the GP at the time. So sort of between 16 and 18, I lived in one city, and then by the time I finished college and then started an apprenticeship at 18 years old, I moved city again. So there was a couple of different, I guess, GP surgeries. I didn't see the same GP for 5 years, but yeah, I definitely went back to multiple, maybe 10, 15 different doctors in that time. And it was just always a case of, well, you're young, fit and healthy, there can't be anything wrong with you. here's another antidepressant prescription, or, oh, for the really bad sort of gynecological period problems you're having, here, try this, here's another contraceptive pill to try. There was a lot of sort of giving me lots of different pills for lots of different symptoms. And I just kind of knew that there had to be one explanation for this. It didn't make sense that at 20 years old, I had sort of 20 different health problems. I was thinking this is what people in their 80s might have, but not someone who's 20. And they kept telling me I was a fit and healthy young person, but I definitely did not feel like it.
And so how did you get to the point where you were able to get the diagnosis?
So at sort of 21, at this point, I was going back to the doctors on pretty much a weekly basis, I think, complaining of one symptom or another, or a medication not helping that symptom. I kind of turned myself into a bit of a nuisance to try and get them to listen to me, essentially. The day I finally got a doctor to listen, I'd gone into her saying, look, for the past 5 years, I've had these periods of feeling really fatigued and then not feeling too bad for a bit, and then feeling really fatigued and kind of it coming and going. But now for the past sort of 4 months, so this was in the April, I said for the last 4 months since Christmas, I've not had any relief. I felt every single day has been heavy fatigue, muscle aches and pains, migraines, my hair's falling out. It was, at this point, nonstop. And I just said, there's got to be something going on. I think I got quite lucky. If I'd caught another GP that day, maybe it would have been a different story. But this particular GP, I saw her at 4:30 in the afternoon, and she said that I was the last patient she was ever seeing. She was retiring. It was her last day in practice, and she was retiring after seeing me. So she just thought, okay, yeah, sure. Tell you what, we'll just tick all these boxes and test for a whole bunch of stuff. We'll test for mono, we'll test your thyroid, your vitamin D, your B12, your iron, all the kind of stuff that can cause hair loss, fatigue, muscle aches and pains, depression, all of those things. And yeah, I think she almost thought, it's my last day, screw it, I'll just do all the things and then someone else can pick up the test results and it'll be their problem. And I got this call a couple of days later from obviously another GP that had picked it up, who was really concerned, just kind of saying, how are you still standing? Like, your thyroid levels are off the charts and you've got like no vitamin D in your body, you've got no B12, you've got no iron. You need to come down and get all these medications and supplements, and we've got to get you started on them. Like I said, I probably got lucky with that GP, but getting that diagnosis was both overwhelming and scary, but a huge sigh of relief at the same time. It was just the beginning, of course, of the next kind of step and the next lot of hurdles to come, but I finally got this confirmation that it wasn't in my head anymore.
Yeah, I think that's just such an important thing, isn't it, to get when it's one of those things, you're searching for it, and when you get it, it is such a relief. But I think, like with anything in life, once you get what you're looking for, your immediate thing is like, okay, I've got that now I need to now I need to actually get better. So what was so you went, now still dealing with the GP, they put you on medication and supplements. What was the plan?
Yeah, so they started me on the vitamin D and the iron and those sort of things to raise the vitamin levels that were pretty much non-existent. And then I was given, so with the diagnosis of Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. So essentially the Hashimoto's had been untreated for so long that it had destroyed enough of my thyroid function that I now had full-blown hypothyroidism as well. So that's better known as an underactive thyroid. You might be more familiar with that term. So I had both conditions hand in hand, which a lot of people do, because for a lot of people it isn't picked up on for many years. In terms of conventional mainstream treatment in the NHS, there is no recognised treatment for the Hashimoto's. For the hypothyroidism, they replace the thyroid hormone that your body is now lacking. So I was prescribed levothyroxine, which is the standard treatment. I was hopeful that would work. It did not. That's probably one of the next questions that you'll ask me. But I was prescribed the levothyroxine. Unfortunately, my health just kept deteriorating for another 6 months. And it was after those 6 months that I decided something had to change, and I started looking at alternative kind of routes, I guess.
So you didn't, so I think what a lot of people might do in that situation is, I've been dealing with GPs now, I'm going to try and get a specific, a specialist within Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism. Did you not try and go maybe down that route first, or were you?
Yes, yes. So I was 6 months into being on this medication, saying to the GP, look, it can't be working. They were saying, lab results look fine, so it must be. Again, have some more antidepressants. I hounded them enough that they eventually agreed to make a referral to an endocrinologist. So that's an endocrine or a thyroid expert, I guess, specialist. I saw that doctor, luckily a couple of weeks later. It wasn't a long waiting list at all, but yeah, it was just, they offered no more help than the GP had. There are some arguments within the thyroid community that you'll get offered better treatment options if you have diabetes or the other kind of conditions recognized within endocrinology and treated by an endocrinologist. But for thyroid conditions within conventional medicine, especially here in the UK anyway, our treatment options are quite limited. Levothyroxine is a T4 only medication. Your thyroid also produces and your body needs the hormone T3 as well. For some people, they do fine on that T4 medication and they convert some of that into T3, which is what the aim of it is supposed to be. But for a lot of us, myself included, my body just wasn't handling that medication well and wasn't doing that conversion. So I knew and I could tell that I required a medication that delivered direct T3 to my body instead. And yeah, I kind of battled this out with the GPs and the endocrinologists for a while, became exhausted by it. And a long story short, after a couple more years, I was able to eventually see a private GP who specializes in thyroid disorders, and I was able to get that medication I needed from him. And that's called Armour Thyroid. And again, that kind of provides you with the complete set of thyroid hormones so that your body is getting more closely to what it would be getting if your thyroid was functioning normally. And yeah, with that, I essentially regained my quality of life. And once I was on that medication, I then had enough energy that I could start implementing other things within my lifestyle to keep improving my health and then eventually get the Hashimoto side of things into remission as well.
So you've skipped to the good part of the story. Let's go back to just in terms of like going down more of an unconventional route. It's my fault. I started to talk about something else. What made you, I guess, make that decision, and what made you make that decision, and what kind of person did you see? What kind of advice did they give you at that point?
So I joined a lot of online forums when I was first diagnosed, and so I knew who an endocrinologist was. I knew that my NHS GP could refer me to them. After I'd kind of gone through that route and just found it more exhausting and not helpful, that's when I would kind of go back to that thyroid patient community, just within sort of social media, Facebook groups, things like that, and discuss other options. And I discovered that a lot of thyroid patients were looking at not only private GPs and that kind of private healthcare, but also more functional medicine practitioners, kind of naturopathic doctors, things like that, the kind of practitioners that could implement things such as looking at your diet, your sleep, your exercise, other parts of your lifestyle, certain supplements that might help to calm inflammation or responses within the body. It was talking within the thyroid patient community, which I will always be incredibly thankful for, and why I'm so passionate about kind of promoting that and being part of that myself, because through other people sharing their experiences with me, I've been able to then try those things myself and get better, and kind of explore the whole world of alternative medicine, and trying to combine that with conventional medicine practices along the way to find that mix that works for me and has finally got me better.
And did you have to do a whole kind of lifestyle shift in terms of like where you were at and where you had to get to?
I mean, I no longer drink alcohol. I was never a huge drinker anyway, but I'd have a few drinks on a Friday, Saturday with friends, as most of us do in our 20s. But again, just those few drinks a week were really causing sort of thyroid flares and exacerbating a lot of conditions. I adopted a gluten-free diet, which made a huge difference to sort of inflammation, to the Hashimoto side of things, and brain fog and gut health. We reassessed my exercise. Looking back now, I was just doing all the wrong sorts, all the wrong frequency and intensity, and just making my health worse, which when I speak to others who have chronic illnesses, we all just seem so guilty of just continually pushing ourselves, thinking we need to keep up with, you know, everyone else hitting the gym 4 days a week or whatever it is. And yeah, I had to rediscover, with the help of these practitioners, what my body could now safely handle, and kind of reframe things like exercise. You know, I'd always grown up thinking that exercise was something you did to lose weight or maintain a certain figure. And I was therefore doing all the wrong stuff, the stuff that was just tiring my body out and making it so much worse. And by reframing that and learning that actually I needed to do more restorative exercise, things that were still giving me a workout and make sure I was still getting my exercise in, but not making me feel worse and not flaring up my thyroid condition. That's been a really big learning point as well. So yeah, looking at the person that I was when I was sort of 2021 and now at the end of my 20s, I'm not only a lot more mature and wise in that way, that I think a lot of us are by the time we go through that time period, sort of chronically ill or not, but the things that I value in life are so different. You know, I value getting a bit more sleep in bed because I know it's going to give me a bit more energy the next day. I'm in bed by like 9:30 these days, and I'm fine with that. I used to be out sort of on the dance floor till 2 a.m, but that lifestyle is what kind of got me in this mess, and like I say, created this perfect storm. So yeah, there are definitely things I implement in my day-to-day, keeping up on top of my supplement regimen, maintaining that I still exercise every day but in the right way, focusing on my diet and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. My day-to-day is definitely a lot different, but it's got me so far now, and it's just second nature. It's so important in keeping my thyroid condition in remission and keeping me feeling well, that I've just adapted to it a lot quicker than if you'd have told me at 20 years old all the things I'd be doing now. I don't think I'd believe it. But yeah, with the right support and the right tools and the right help, you can definitely sort of implement things that you can do yourself that just help to look after you every day.
Yeah. And so symptoms wise now, you said you're in remission. Are you, how do you feel compared to, I guess, from when this all started, from when you were 16? Are you in a better condition than you were then? Or are you, yeah, how do you compare?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm, with being in remission, I have sort of no symptoms day to day. The thing I have to be careful of is not flaring things back up again. So like I say, if I have a few too many nights of staying up past midnight, if I perhaps have the odd drink or eat something with gluten in, or binge too much sugar over Christmas, which is probably likely at some point, I'll experience a day or two of a flare where my Hashimotos and hypothyroid symptoms come back, and they're intense for a few days, and I have to really focus on looking after myself and trying to recuperate as much as I can with a toddler as well, and focus on sort of getting myself back on track. So yeah, day to day, things are good. I don't have any sort of symptoms. I'm on top of things, but yeah, sometimes there are sort of external factors and things outside of our control as well. So if, you know, if you hit a stressful patch at work, or there's stress within the family, you know, a personal situation, that can always flare these things back up too. So I definitely have to give myself some grace and the ability to move with that as well, and just know that flare-ups can still come. My Hashimoto's will probably go out of remission again at some point, but I know now the sort of things to do to get it back under control. So yeah, I have that toolkit, I guess. Now I know this stuff, and I know the things that can help me. I can always dip back into them and use that to keep things on track.
Well, I think even just having that, I guess you've already calmed your nervous system down by saying that just there and then. Like, you know, you've got this toolkit that if anything goes off track, you can just put it back on because you know what to do. And even by knowing that, subconsciously, that's going to give yourself, you know, your body's going to feel protected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I know sort of with, now we're in, you know, recording this in December, the festive season's coming up, and I already know that there are some things I need to start doing now to try and protect my energy and try to prevent as many flares as possible. But I know every year I'm still going to have a few days where it flares up because I've done too many social things. I've eaten too much unhealthy food, which, you know, I'll take the sacrifice for that for a few days for Christmas. Stayed up too late, just done all the things. And I know that things will be fine, because I know the sort of things to do to then get myself through those rougher days of health now. And I had my first child last year. He was born just over a year and a half ago, and I had a really straightforward pregnancy and thing. Luckily, my thyroid condition was really well managed, but I was preparing myself for things to flare back up and come out of remission afterwards, as most health conditions do. And I was amazed that for the first 6 months postpartum, my health was great. My Hashimoto's didn't come out of remission. Everything was fine. But then I hit the 6 month postpartum mark and everything went crazy. And suddenly my Hashimoto's came out of remission. All these old symptoms came back. I felt awful. And in this kind of sleep deprived state as well, I had to again reach for that toolkit and reach out to the practitioners that I've worked with before, the functional health practitioner that has helped me so much over the years, and just go back to her and say, right, I need your help again. And that's okay. I think chronic illness is rarely ever a linear line to kind of getting better. Progression is never linear. We can get better, but then like I said earlier, external things as well as internal things can make things change again. And I think it just helps to adopt this approach of almost expecting that, but knowing that we can get ourselves back to a good place again. Once we've kind of got those tools and we know that stuff, nothing in life kind of stays the same forever. And I'd be kidding myself if I was saying that I'll forever be feeling great and in remission. But yeah, it gives me, like you said, just a lot of peace to know that if stuff does go a bit wonky again, we know what to do and it'll be okay. We'll work through it.
And it's also, you've probably gone through one of the most obviously amazing times, but also stressful times, like having your child, and then after 6 months for that to have happened, at a time where it's your first child, right?
Yeah. I was definitely in like a false sense of security when it hit.
Yeah. You're like figuring out how to be a parent, and then that happened as well. The fact that you were able to move through that after how long of your symptoms returning were you able to get yourself stabilized again?
Within about 3 or 4 months, which was
really,
for me, my Hashimoto's was then back in remission within about 3 or 4 months. And that was, like I say, just reaching out to that practitioner that had helped me before, and just implementing all these, I guess, more like alternative approaches, certain supplements, focusing in on diet and exercise, and building in time into every day to kind of unwind, be away from screens, just kind of switch off, even be in nature, just all those kind of things that all add up to helping just calm your overall body and just calm things down and give yourself that time you need to, just heal and get through it again.
Yeah. Going back to the time when you were in this, you've had to go through this when you're going through the biggest growth period of your life, from 16 through your 20s. You've had to go through this whilst you've been growing, which is kind of crazy. Also with that, you've had relationships that you've also between 16, I'm trying to think, between 16 and 25, the relationships I had would have changed so much, and I didn't have a chronic illness at that point. How difficult was it for you to keep the relationships you had, build, and did you lose any relationships? Could you just give us some detail on the relationship side of things?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. It's something I don't think I've been asked before, but thinking about it, I think whenever you go through a big life event, something huge in your life, it sounds cheesy and cliche, but it's true. You do find out who your kind of real friends are, the people who are going to stick around through the thick and thin. And there were definitely a couple of friends that did stick around through the whole thing and are still with me now. My husband, who at the time was my boyfriend, we only started dating at 16, so he's kind of stuck by me through a whole load of tough stuff. But then there were obviously some other friends who couldn't deal with the fact that I couldn't come out drinking and clubbing and doing things as much as they could. I couldn't keep up with that pace, or if I was struggling to get back to messages or just keep in touch with people because I was sleeping a lot of the time and just ill. A lot of people understandably took that personally because they didn't have the full picture of what was going on. I didn't even understand the full picture. But yeah, I think that period of your life is so testing anyway. Without health conditions, you're trying to figure out where you fit in the world and where you fit in society and what your role is within your friendship groups and your family. Yeah, throwing a chronic illness in it just kind of it swallowed up a lot of my time and energy that I just didn't have a lot of time to kind of maintain friendships, I guess. I've written 2 books, and my second book is about how it affects sort of relationships, such as romantic relationships. And so I've spoken a lot about how how my now husband was affected, and how we had this really rough period of him just trying to understand what was going on, but I couldn't even understand it myself. Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for the people that stick by us and really try their best to help navigate all of this with us. And they're often affected in some ways too. Like, it was a huge mental strain on him to essentially, become my carer when we were like 20 years old. But yeah, if you can navigate it and find a way to get through it, it can, again, it sounds cliche, but it really can help to strengthen your relationship and add another depth of, well, we've managed to navigate this huge thing, and we still navigate it on a daily basis. And it can, yeah, be such a learning curve. I think the things I value from friendships now are different to 10 years ago. I make a point to not surround myself with the sort of people that I refer to as energy suckers. The sort of people in my life that I have are only people that make me feel good. They're only people who, after I've seen them, I come away thinking, oh, I want to spend more time with them.
Yeah.
People that don't leave me feeling like that, I just don't associate with anymore, because I don't have the time and energy for it. Whereas, when you're in your teens, it's almost cool to have as many friends as possible, and they're not always the right sort of people for you.
No.
And if you're adding to that kind of stress, that's only going to make your health worse as well.
Definitely. I don't know where it was I heard from it, and I might have even said it on the podcast a few times. Someone saying about like balloons and dead weights. And it's like, you want to be around balloons, people who are going to, help raise your frequency, raise you up, rather than dead weights, rather than dragging you, back down to like the, to where they are. And I think I used to see that in my, like where I used to work. There was a lot of good people there, but it was just like everyone used to just drag people into their own like negative drama about what was going on. Luckily, I haven't had loads of that with my friends. So I think I've been quite lucky with all of that. But I just think about that in life in general. If you're around someone who's consistently complaining and looking at the negative stuff, you're going to start looking at that as well.
I'm definitely one of those people that starts to almost suck up and absorb other people's emotions and it's like those qualities. If I spend a couple of days around someone who complains about everything, I'm soon doing it too, and then I come away thinking, why am I doing this? Like, I clearly need to either kind of stop being with this person, or at least limit how often, because I really don't want to adopt that kind of mindset. It's not useful, is it really?
Well, I think it's being British as well. I do think there's something about we live in such a dark, cold place that people find it really easy to complain and moan. So then when people start doing that, it's quite easy to get on board with that.
I can see that. Yeah.
Do you have you the way in which you talk, it sounds like you've gone, it's not just been like a physical, I guess, transformation for you. You've undergone like mental, but maybe more of a spiritual, mental transformation as well, where, you're maybe looking at life a little bit differently. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't know how much of that, again, is owed towards how much I would have matured in the last 10 years or so anyway. I think chronic illness definitely puts a lot of things into perspective though. I don't know if you or some of your listeners would be familiar with like the spoon theory and things like that, but there's a theory not created by me, by someone else within the chronic illness community. It's called the spoon theory, and it's to do with this idea that you wake up with so many spoons, and spoons just being a unit of energy. So you might wake up with 10 a day, and as someone with a chronic health condition, you have to decide how you're going to use those effectively. So say my husband, for example, he doesn't have any ongoing health conditions that affect his day to day. He can just get up, take a shower, go for a run if he wants. As long as he's got the time, he can pretty much do whatever he wants. But if I get up and go have a shower and go for a run, that's me kaput for the day. I probably don't have the energy to work and look after my child as well. So yeah, it's this idea that those of us with chronic health conditions, for us to kind of get through the day, it's good for us to keep in mind how we're going to use that energy. And for me, it's not just physical energy, it's like mental things you use up, those spoons, those units of energy as well. So if I'm surrounding myself with people that I just kind of find hard work and don't enjoy being around, that's also draining me. And then it just makes me want to basically get home and sit in a dark room by myself and just sit in silence. It's all draining, it's all overstimulating. Yeah, as I've kind of matured over the years and gone through all of this, it's definitely made me reevaluate my work life, my relationships, even just how I go about day to day, like processing and working through the to-do list and all the kind of stuff that, like we've said, people our age probably don't really think about yet, that until they're that bit older and they're at that point in their lives. But we often have to slow down and think about this stuff a little bit sooner. Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely been a whole sort of mindset shift. If you'd have asked me 10 years ago about things like yoga or meditation, I'd have laughed and thought it was a ridiculous idea. But I know now that those things are such a crucial part to many of us, just kind of getting through the day and preventing flare-ups, or at least trying to ease kind of difficult health days. Yeah, it's one of those, I think, unless you've lived it, you probably don't truly get what it's like to experience it.
Yeah, well, I guess it forces you to look at, I think what chronic illness for me anyway has forced me to do is forced me to look outside of like my comfort zone and what's going on here, because I've had to, because if I didn't, then I'd have to just accept what is going on here. Like I've had to and what that's made me realize is that actually there is, beyond the physical stuff, there's actually more to life from a spiritual, mental side of things as well. Which I think is actually a really cool thing to realize, which I don't think I probably would have. Well, I probably would have realized that something like that exists, but I just wouldn't have been bothered to go and have a look.
Yeah, I think one thing I found really useful is this whole idea of having a growth mindset. So constantly looking at how you can better understand things, how you keep learning, just keep keep developing instead of being fixed as this is just how I am. And when a lot of us look at how our parents or grandparents view things, we often think that, don't we? They're kind of stuck as to how life was 30 years ago. Yeah. I always try and approach things with an open mind, with just kind of like a fresh perspective on things, and trying to be really honest and open about, could this help me? How could this serve me? Just regularly trying new things, even if it's a hobby or a type of exercise or a type of treatment that could help me with my health condition. If sort of any of your listeners aren't familiar with the idea of a growth mindset, I'd suggest looking at things like that as well, because that can just help shift your mindset so hugely, especially if you get stuck in quite a difficult phase, a different kind of part of your health journey, and you're perhaps feeling quite hopeless, or you're not sure things are ever going to pick up. I know some of us get stuck in a bit of a grieving stage. Then kind of trying to strengthen your mindset and your mental health can be a really good starting point to lead on to other stuff.
Definitely. And with regards to some, like, thinking about some, like, the people who are listening to this right now, there's probably someone going through this at their worst possible time, can't see a way out. We're talking about mindset, but they're probably thinking, I just want out of this physical body that I'm in right now, and I can't see a way out. What would be your advice to someone right now listening to this who's going through that? Maybe not necessarily the actual steps to take, but just mentally, your advice to them.
Know that there are other people out there, and find your community, find your tribe. Whatever kind of health condition you have, there will be other people out there with it. They're often, like we said before, in online forums and support groups, or you can use hashtags within Instagram and other social media to try and find those people. just find them. The first step is to realize that you're not alone in what you're experiencing, but also there will be success stories out there of people who have managed to improve the state of things and improve their health. When I was first diagnosed, I joined the Facebook groups because I wanted to find other people that kind of knew what it was about. If I'm honest, I got sucked into a lot of these groups of people just kind of complaining and stuck in this hopeless stage, but not knowing how to go forward. And I think if you're stuck there for too long, it can really take hold of you. And it's almost like your chronic illness is who you are, and it's entirely who you are. So go looking for the community, but find those success stories and start talking to people about what it is they've done. What's worked for them may not be exactly what works for you, but it's about sort of trying to find all those kind of jigsaw puzzle pieces that could be the right fit for you as well. And then just knowing others with your health condition have improved, that alone helps give you hope. And that's what kind of kickstarted me realizing I didn't just have to put up with it.
No, I'm glad you said that about the Facebook groups, because I talk about it quite a lot on this podcast, just because I had to get. There were some interesting things that came out of it, but it sent me down the other way. Like it wasn't a good thing for me. But I think what you're saying is to connect with other people, but then just in a positive way, to find out what's working for other people, and the stories of people who are actually getting better.
Yeah, I mean, some forums are better. Similarly to you, I found sort of getting sucked into a lot of the online forums and groups made me feel like a lot more anxious about my health and a bit more doomed about it all. Using things like hashtags and searching for my health condition on more places like Twitter or Instagram is probably the best, to find other people that are sharing that they've got it, but that they're getting better or have got better. And then from there, Instagram just then keeps suggesting similar accounts. And I started to realize, oh, wait, there are loads of people out there who have got better or are managing this. And I found that a much better way to do things. But in terms of Facebook groups, online forums, some are definitely more kind of recovery focused than others. So there can just be a bit of trial and error with finding the right fit for you. But I definitely try and find your community and just get some help that way, or even if it just makes you feel less alone.
Yeah, definitely. And final question from me. What are the ways in which you think your life is potentially better now as a result of what you've been through? Are the elements of your life now that you're like super grateful for because of what you've been through that maybe you wouldn't have had you not had to go through what you've been through?
My relationship with my husband is a lot more strengthened. I think that we had to grow up quite young. We matured quite young. And there's so much more understanding and depth to our relationship now, because of what we've been through and experiencing all of that together. Me personally, as a person, I'm a lot more confident in more ways than one. So through this whole experience, I've had to learn to become more assertive in the doctor's office, to learn how to advocate for myself and advocate for my health, and to feel as if I have the ability to take charge of the situation, to decide to hire a private doctor or go see this practitioner or that practitioner, and to ask for certain testing. I've definitely developed more confidence, and the feeling of just feeling empowered. If anything good is to come out of this whole experience, is that it's definitely improved me as a person. I was sort of a very shy, timid, awkward person before, and by going through all of this, it's not only developed my confidence in talking to a doctor, but I'll be up on the dance floor now. I'll be just more confident all around, because I know that I've got this and I can get myself through what was probably the worst experience of my life. And so it's given me more, I guess, confidence to just deal with whatever else life has to throw at me. I've definitely come out a more better, well-rounded person, I would say.
No, definitely. And now you're helping other people in that situation. Like, when did you start doing this?
So that was when I first got diagnosed. I started blogging on my website when everyone had a blog, just about like, I've got this diagnosis, now I'm going to the doctor, all so I guess more mundane stuff, but it was a way for me to just process it and just feel like I wasn't keeping it all inside. And then by doing that, other patients found me. We talked more and more, and then I sort of created an Instagram, and that just, it all just kind of snowballed. So that was about 6 years ago now. And so, I still have my website, but I have email newsletters and various social media channels, and written 2 books, just to try and create as many forms of reaching other people and helping them navigate all of this as possible. It feels good to have taken what could have been a really negative, in a bad way, life-changing experience, and turning it into something more positive and useful, and into a good life-changing experience, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I mean, this is what this is all about. It's like, the title of the podcast is The Chronic, which is a negative, has negative connotation. We can't come back to kind of, and that's exactly what, you've just talked about then, taking that really negative experience, but actually taking it into something that's amazing. And the good thing about it is about, all the interactions that you're having means that the people that will have the same experience through interacting with you will then hopefully go on and do that with other people. And then you just get this whole, what's the word? Compound, effect wherever. There's an expression I'm trying to think of it.
Like a cosmic effect, like
I was thinking halo effect, but it's not
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Someone leave a comment in the YouTube thing. You just let me know what you think. That's a pure mental block there. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been, I think we spoke just before the episode began. Despite us having very different symptoms and very different things going on in our bodies, I can see so many similarities in what we've been going through, and also just, I guess, the view we have on it now. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, and there'll be many people listening to this and watching this that don't have the same health conditions, but I think there are so many similarities despite what kind of health conditions we have, that hopefully it still just helps people to feel heard and helps to give them hope that, they can come back from it.
Absolutely. And if people want to connect with you, reach out to you, how would they best do that?
So I'm across social media as Rachel Hill, also The Invisible Hypothyroidism, which is the name of my blog. You can get there's almost 600 articles on my website now, so there's lots of information on there. You also got my books, which are called Be Your Own Thyroid Advocate and You, Me and Hypothyroidism. And then I'm across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual places really. You can also look at my free email newsletter, which goes straight to your inbox once a fortnight. All of these just aim to create that community and fill you in on the sort of stuff that you can do to help get yourself better. So you can reach out to me in any one of those ways. I kind of love to chat to others and just get conversations going.
Awesome. I'm sure you'll have numerous people reaching out to you after this. So once again, thank you so much for coming on, and excited to get this out there.
Thank you very much.